If your life has been shaped by chaos, trauma, or instability, money doesn't feel like math. It feels like pressure, exposure, shame, threat. That's why budgeting can feel suffocating to certain people. And if you don't give them the financial advice that goes beyond the mind and touches the nervous system, you'll never understand that. So today, I want to talk about why budgeting feels unsafe and how to start leading your money. Because a budget is not restriction, a budget is leadership. A budget is giving your dollars orders, taking command of your resources. And if we are serious about destroying suicidal ideation in our lifetime, then we have to get serious about chaos. Because hopelessness grows fast when your finances are out of order. Hey guys, my name is Thomas Emmanuel Orms O'Brien. I'm the president and co-founder of Building a Home Inc. along with my wife, Vanessa. And normally we introduce ourselves every single week because we understand that our verbiage is very unique to us. But what I would like you to do is we just recently launched a brand new over 1 hour introductory video of who we are, why we're here, our ideas, and our framework for tackling all of these subjects in our school community. So what I would invite you to do is, if you want to know the specific details about the BHI framework and why it ties into all of the subjects that we talk about, please go ahead and join. It is absolutely for free, and we believe that every single person has the capacity to take away not only wisdom, but implementable, actionable skills and resources from the BHI framework. I will tell you a little bit about myself right now. I am a former drug addict and alcoholic. I'm a rehabilitated habitual liar, a suicide survivor, 2022. For the last 10 years, I've been working in the financial service industry, and for the last 20 years, was actually being groomed to become a messianic rabbi until I found out it was all a lie and I left it behind in pursuit of my true calling, which is that I aspire to obtain a degree in psychology with a minor in neuroscience. At the moment, I'm currently doing that in the form of an autodidact, but eventually I will be enrolled in a formal accredited university. Right now, we're going to get back to the video because one of the hallmarks of despair and suicidal ideation is having a horrible relationship with money. So the first principle that we teach when it comes to financial stability at BHI is getting on a budget, because people who come from a traumatic background are used to absolute chaos. So for a person to thrive and become successful, you must introduce order to that chaos. And unfortunately, not just people from traumatic backgrounds, but still people all over the world today do not have the proper relationship with money, realizing that it is a tool, it is an inanimate object. The emotions that quell with money are because of us, not from the piece of paper with dead presidents' faces on it. And so, understanding the true value, understanding that it is a tool to be utilized for your future success, and doing your utmost to remove emotion from money. Now, that does not mean you don't have conviction when it comes to your finances, right? But you must first look at it objectively as a number that reveals truth. that's why we say get on a budget. Because if your money isn't being led by you, then your emotions are leading it. Like I said, if you want a full breakdown of our entire philosophy as to how we approach all of these topics, please go join us in school. We would love to see you there. We have weekly live calls every Monday night from 5:30 to 6:30, and we have resources that we utilize in curriculum to help people discover purpose through psychology, neuroscience, philosophy, history, economics, and value creation, all rooted in Near Eastern ancient manuscripts, including but not limited to the Bible. Back to the video. So, why does this matter? Well, this matters because financial chaos is not just inconvenient. If you let it stretch for long, long periods of time, it can become existential. Not only is it bad for relationships, it's bad for your mental health, period. End of story. Why? Because when your life already feels unstable, money problems do not stay on paper. They enter your body, they enter your marriage, they enter your sleep, they enter your sense of future, and they enter your hope. And hopelessness is dangerous. That is why the first floor matters so much in BHI. The first floor is physical and financial health, because if the first floor is cracked, everything else above it shakes. So no, this is not just about spreadsheets. This is about stability. This is about peace. This is about removing one more driver of collapse, introducing order to chaos, and getting on the path to wholeness, where nothing is missing and nothing is broken. So, why trauma makes budgeting feel unsafe? Let's say it plainly. For some people, budgeting feels simple. For others, like myself, for many years, feels like pressure, shame, and exposure. Don't feel like that now. It's very important to understand these things. Why? Because trauma trains you to avoid what feels threatening. And let us define trauma properly. Trauma is not the horrible event in itself that happened to you, it's the internal wound that you sustained as a result. And so your nervous system, which is attached directly to your brain, adapts for survival. It's your brain's primary evolutionary function. And so to truly live, though, you must move past the survival part of your brain, which is the amygdala, your threat center, and start living here in your prefrontal cortex. This is where executive decision making happens, the capacity to be an upward aiming individual that hopes for the future, that makes plans for the future, that innovates and creates, and intuition. It's all up here in the prefrontal cortex. But all information is first passed through your threat center. And so a highly traumatized individual or a person who came from a traumatic childhood, the amygdala is actually enlarged in the brain. Your brain structure is different than a person who experienced love, safety, and predictability growing up. And so the information takes much longer to get out of your amygdala and travel up into the prefrontal cortex. And it does its utmost to stop it from moving forward into the prefrontal cortex. Because survival is about what's right in front of you, not what's ahead. And so Trauma trains you to avoid what feels threatening. And money can feel threatening for a lot of reasons. The first, this is a brutal truth, but the truth is what sets us free. Your finances expose reality. Your finances are a direct picture of your mental health. If you are healthy and on your way to purpose through value creation, your finances will reflect that. If you are healthy but ignorant, your finances will reflect that. If you are unhealthy, your finances will reflect that. So, money exposes the reality of your capacity to think, move, plan, perform, all of those things on a spreadsheet or on a bank app. And so, the other thing it does is it confronts your habits. What you spend your money on lets you know what you prioritize. What are you giving value to in your life? It also forces choices. To become a financially responsible individual, you have to take control. You can no longer live on a whim. The other thing it does is remove fantasy. Because you can think that you want to be rich, have riches, be financially successful, all of these things. But at the end of the day, the reality is the reality. So it there's nothing wrong with having aspirations to be wealthy. In fact, you should. But if you're not even budgeting, the likelihood of you excelling and becoming a wealthy individual or learning how to properly manage your finances is close to zero. The other thing, too, is it makes lack visible. When you face your finances, you see everything you also don't have, which hurts, especially in this modern age of social media where it is very easy to see what other people have. So when you are constantly monitoring your finances as an upward aiming positive individual who is hoping for the future, you will see, wow, this is what I do not have. You also see, wow, this is what I have, but unfortunately it exposes lack. And oftentimes what it can do is remind you of instability from the first home. How your parents were with their finances, what it felt like to be in a home that's finances were chaotic. If you grew up like me, I grew up very poor. At a certain point in my life, between the age of 9 and 11, I was actually homeless with my biological father living out of his car. And then when he got a job, he convinced the manager of the office where he was working to let us stay in the building after the janitors and the cleaning team left at 11 p.m. at night. So imagine I'm 9 years old until 11, and then at 11, we were able to sneak into the office building at nighttime. And so obviously when I was dealing with finances, all I remembered was how horrible my relationship to finances were, and it was things that are completely out of my control because I wasn't the parent, I was the child. And so this can feel threatening to you, which makes you want to avoid it. So if you grew up in chaos, numbers may not feel neutral. They may feel like danger. But that doesn't mean you're weak. I want you to understand that. It means your system, your nervous system, learned to associate structure with pain, pressure, or failure. If a person from in utero to 12 years old didn't have love, safety, and predictability growing up, you develop what is known as maladaptive coping mechanisms. In attachment theory, there is only one healthy attachment style, which is secure attachment. If you had any form of trauma or chaos in your childhood, it is not scientifically possible for you to have developed secure attachment. You can develop secure attachment later on in life by being aware of the fact that you need it and work on yourself, but not as a child. And so all of these things compound and lead your money to being in chaos. And so that is why money chaos is emotional before it is mathematical. That means avoidance is emotional. Overspending is often emotional. Consumer debt is often emotional. Buying things that you can't afford to impress people that you don't give a shit about. That's what going into debt to buy a car is. That's what going into debt to buy a Rollie is. That's what's going into debt to buy the next pair of Jordans is. It's emotional. And then financial denial is emotional. Oh, yeah, I'm doing okay. When in reality, you have no idea how you're doing because you just spend and spend and spend until you ran out of money. And then your overdraft protection kicks in and you have to pray to God and cross your fingers and hope not to die until the next paycheck hits your bank account, which then you're in the negative because you have to pay the bank back for your overdraft fees, and you can't utilize your entire paycheck to pay the bills that you actually do have coming. Dang. And then, of course, even under earning can be tied to identity, shame, or fear. So, if someone only attacks the numbers but never tells the truth about the emotions underneath, they stay stuck. That is why I don't want BHI to become generic money content. I'm not interested in just saying, hey, cut this, cut that, stop going to Dunkin' Donuts in the morning and buying a coffee, which is important, to save more. That's incomplete, though. The real question is, what does money feel like to you? What story do numbers tell your nervous system? What are you actually avoiding when you avoid looking at your finances and getting on a budget? There are real demons, there are real monsters, there are real dragons to slay. Because remember, like I said, money doesn't import emotion into us, we import our emotion onto the money. Very important distinction. Understanding that a budget is not restriction, it's leadership. Now, here's the rebuild. Okay? A budget is where stewardship becomes visible. How well your finances are doing, the direction that your finances are going, just like for the bad and for the negative list that we made earlier, also has a positive list. If you're budgeting well, and we're not budgeting for the rest of our lives, we're budgeting to get back to baseline. Because if you came from chaos, you have to introduce order into the chaos. Then, once you are ordered with your finances, you can start understanding and adopting other financial strategies that excel outside of budgeting. But budgeting is step one. Gotta get to budgeting first. Knowing where every dollar goes, how often it goes, how much of those dollars go, who they go to, and why they're going there. You can't answer those questions regularly, like off the top of your memory, because every wealthy individual has a deeply intimate relationship with their finances. They understand exactly what all of those things are, where they're going, who they're going to, why they're going to those people, and how much. you have a problem. But getting on that budget is where stewardship becomes visible. The budget says these dollars have an assignment. The money is not random. This household, my household, is not going to just drift in every single direction, right? There's stability, there's structure. So when inflation comes, so when the next crash comes, so when the next, desperate fear mongering, oh, the dollar is not worth as much as it used to be comes. Like, you still gotta get paid and pay your bills, right? So all of the garbage on the news, it won't phase you if you know that your finances are properly structured, right? And then it tells two things about you. Very important. Number one, I'm going to tell the truth. Because if you're not telling the truth about your finances, then most likely you're not telling the truth about yourself and your life. Hiding behind money means you have things to hide. Bring it to the light. Tell the truth, because you will never succeed in a false reality. Reality will always snap back. That's just how physics works. You can bend reality, and you may even bend it for quite some time, but eventually it will snap back. All of the psychoneurological data we have on human beings for the last hundreds of thousands of years of our existence, since we've been able to communicate and document among ourselves, shows one very important thing. Nobody gets away with anything. Eventually, those actions, whatever actions they are exposed. It may take 10, 20, 30, 50 years, but eventually, guess what? They're exposed. So don't go against the fabric of reality. Be the person who says, I'm going to be courageous enough to tell the truth. And one of the areas I will be a truth telling individual is my money. That makes you very powerful. That makes you different in a world of people living behind credit cards, swiping for things that they don't need to impress people that they don't know or care about. Be the one who stands and says, nah, I'm gonna build something real. And then that puts you in a very unique position to do something else. Lead. That's the last thing it says about you, that you're going to lead instead of react. That you're no longer going to be a reactionary coward, that you're going to be a courageous, proactive individual. The time for sitting on the sidelines is gone. I'm getting in the arena, baby. And if you pieces of garbage are in the stands holding popcorn, stuffing your faces with hot dogs, and you got something to say, well, guess what? At least I'm in the arena with a sword and shield in my hand, fighting for my life. That's a leader. The one who acts. Action. Right action is the most profitable skill in the history of human existence in the entirety of this universe. Become a leader. And that is why I say, if you don't lead your money, your emotions will. And emotions make terrible financial leaders, especially when they are unhealed. And so the budget is not punishment, it's command. It's the moment you stop asking, where did it all go? and start saying, here is where it will go. I get excited just saying that to you guys. Here is where it will go. Imagine being able to say that in every facet of your life. Here is where my wife and I are going. Here is where my wife and I and kids are going. This is the direction our household is heading in. Come hell or high water. We're going this way. Y'all mofos can go in whatever direction you want. We're going this way. So, stop the bleeding. One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to jump straight to wealth language when they are still bleeding out. I don't want to hear you excited about the next stock when you got $10,000 of consumer debt and you ain't on a budget. You're jumping ahead of the line. It's not going to work for you because guess what? If that stock pops off and you make money from it, guess what you're going to do? You're going to exhibit the same behaviors as you did before. If you don't change, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So you can't skip the step of stewardship and direction and right action to get full access to wealth. There is no get rich quick scheme. No one is coming to save you. Potentially you already have a savior, but guess where he's at? He's sitting on the right hand of the Father. He ain't there to magically make money appear at the end of the rainbow in a golden pot with a green suit on. You're responsible. You. And so, don't be backwards, man. Don't jump straight to wealth language. Oh, I'm investing, I'm doing stocks, I'm doing bonds, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Because before investing comes honesty, order, baseline, margin, debt reduction, and basic peace. Because to invest is even more stressful. It's uncertain. You're trusting that the market is going to utilize your funds for your best interest. You're taking your money and putting it in the hands of other individuals. Not the best idea. Maybe invest in the things that you care about, that you're competent enough to understand. That would be cool. Right? Take control back. You know, you do not talk to a bleeding man first about sprinting. You stop the bleeding. If homie is stabbed in his side and you're on the track, you don't say to him, "Hey man, let's go run a 40 real quick." No, you apply pressure on the wound. You do a tourniquet. Then you know, disinfect, put gauze, call 911. And so that's what the budget does. It gets you back to baseline. It helps you face your bills, stop the leaks, stop pretending, stop consumer debt from growing, and regain command of your resources. Then, once you are back to baseline, like I said earlier, wisdom can enter the room and you can start understanding tax strategy, you can understand financial strategy, you can understand investing, you can understand utilizing debt to acquire cash flowing assets. All of that comes way later though, because you have to be the type of person who can handle that kind of wisdom. Most people want to build, but they don't build capacity first. If you don't have capacity, you will never succeed. That's why it says, if those who are faithful with little, then will be faithful with much. You got to face the truth of your own ignorance. There is a chasm of where you are and who you want to be. A courageous person starts to build a bridge, one section at a time. Now, once the bleeding stops, the deeper question begins. Who am I? What is my purpose? Because once you have money, then of course the next question is what to do with it, right? What am I building? What kind of life am I trying to fund? That is where identity and purpose come in. Because if you don't know who you are or what you're building, then money gets wasted. It gets consumed by impulse, by distraction, by drift, right? I knew who I am. I know where we're going. I know what I'm trying to build. So my funds go to value creation, which the first step of investment is investing in yourself. Invest in skills that create value, and because value always will be an exchange in the marketplace from one person to another, right? And so, but when identity is clear, then money becomes directional. You begin to say things like, this is what matters. This is what I'm funding. This is what I'm cutting. This is what I'm investing in. This is where I'm going. So the budget gives you command back, I said. But identity and purpose tell you where to take your money once command is restored. So this is the BHI model, and we have adopted this from one of the most influential students and professors on finance the world has ever seen. His name is Garrett Gunderson. And he says that vision is the rarest commodity on the planet. The capacity to tell, this is where we're going. This is where I'm going. And then if you have a big enough vision, you can invite others to say, hey, this is where we're going. Right? And so this is the BHI model. Vision leads to value. Value leads to dollars. That's almost a direct quote from Eric Gunderson. But vision, I'll explain it this way. It answers several questions. It says, who am I? Why am I here? What am I building? What kind of future am I trying to create? And then value answers these other questions. It answers, how do I become more useful in an aligned way? Right? How do I become of use to other human beings? How do I bring value to the table? Right? And that is, what problems can you solve? What skills can I build? Right? How do I bring more substance to the table? So what happens is then you get dollars. And so dollars tend to follow value over time. It's not always instant. It's not magical. But as a principle, durable income follows real value creation. So no, the first investment is not in the stock market. The first investment is in the self. You. Who you are. If you're married, you and your spouse. In us. In becoming the best version of ourselves. Because the better version of ourselves we are, the more value we bring to the table, the more dollars will follow the value that we bring to the table. Because the value is substantially greater than what we can do, let's say, right, is charge higher prices for our value. All right, so the first investment in self is in skill, discipline, structure, in your health, right? Credibility and usefulness in the right direction. That is how dollars eventually follow value. But the thing is, the normal financial landscape, they don't want you to invest in you. Because if you invest in you, the broker at the hedge fund is obsolete because you know who you are and where you want your money to go. They want you to stay ignorant because they want you to believe that an average of 10% over 50 years, so that then you can use your money after you've retired later, is great. Versus learning how to create enough value to live the life that I want to live now with my family, and then getting proper structure in place to protect our finances for our life now and future generations. They want to be in control of your money and where it's going, versus having the individual be empowered, so then the couple can be empowered, so then the family can be empowered, and then a family that's empowered can impact the community, and then when a community is empowered, can change the world. Here's your practical next step. We always want to leave you with something that you can do, because information and knowledge is great, right? Clarity brings awareness, awareness brings options, and options lead to opportunities. The opportunity that you have today is to decide, are you going to be in control or out of control? And so your first floor rebuild, right, starts like this. Write down every monthly bill you have. Every bill you have. No exceptions. And I'm not talking about the things that you want to purchase, right? Like, oh, my Starbucks account that I run my points on every day. No. The bills that you have to pay every single month to live properly, right? In Ramsey Solutions, they call it the four walls. So that's either your mortgage or your rent, right? If you have neither of those, then congratulations, right? But either your mortgage or your rent, your light bill, your phone bill, your internet bill, right? Your car payment, if you have one, your car insurance, right? Gas, right? Antivirus, if you are responsible with how you connect to the internet, right? Food, very important, right? Those 10 things usually cover the 10 monthly bills. If you have young kids, daycare, right? All of that stuff. But so you need to write down every monthly bill that is required for living, not your desires, what is required for living. And then just face your current numbers without flinching, whatever it is. Yep, this is what I got to deal with. And it's going to feel overwhelming at first. Trust me, I get it. I was there. And then you want to map your monthly income, what you're bringing in versus what's going out. And then you give every single dollar you have an assignment, right? If you have leftover from your income to your monthly required bills, you do what's wise first. You put that extra money towards an emergency fund, $1,000 emergency fund. And then after that, you voraciously attack consumer debt. Consumer debt. Then you build up a 6-month emergency fund. Once you're completely out of debt, you do half a year of your living expenses saved. And if you're smart, you're doing it in a high yield saving account, which is instead of your normal like 0.4% at your bank, you go find a high yield saving account that gets you between 4 to 7% a year on your money. And then number 4 is you cut what is bleeding you. All of the garbage that you don't need. Yes, that means your subscriptions. Yes, that means your daily Dunkin' or your daily Starbucks. Yes, that means you're buying video games. Yes, that means you're buying stuff that you want that you don't need. Just cut what's bleeding you. You're bleeding out. Eventually, you'll bleed to death. Number 5, don't even think about investing until the chaos slows down. Till you're back to baseline. Baseline is debt-free and on a budget. That's baseline. I'm on my way there right now. I got student loans and a car payment left. Then after that, I'm going to invest in self. Then number 6, ask what kind of life am I trying to build? Very important question. Perhaps your most important question. Really think deeply on it. Don't just give a surface answer like, "Oh yeah, I want to be rich." No, what does rich mean? Usually rich just means a guy with money or a gal, which doesn't really mean much. No depth there. If you want to be wealthy, that means the capacity to extract maximum joy from every situation. And a lot of times money allows you to do that. There's a difference. And then 7, start becoming more valuable in a way that is aligned. So you have inherent value as a human being. Right? Heart, mind, soul, body. Your life has value. But in the marketplace, the free exchange, the world will let you know how valuable your work is based on how much they're willing to pay you for it. If no one wants to pay you for your work right now, the truth is your work is not valuable enough. But if you work on it, you build your skills, you invest in yourself, your work will become valuable enough to where dollars will follow that value. You just stick to it. And that is where financial wholeness begins. If you grew up in chaos, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not disqualified from peace. Healing is possible. Wholeness is possible. And financial order is part of that story. So here's my question. What's your next step? Drop it in the comments. What is your next step today? Not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, not New Year's resolution next year. Today. And if you want structure, accountability, and people rebuilding with you, again, I invite you, join us in school. The link is in the description. And also, resources are in the description if you're in a dark place. You need to know that you're not alone. My name is Thomas Emmanuel Orms O'Brien. Love you guys. See you on the next one.